to close out 2024, the governor also acted on several pertinent bills, including vetoing the Grieving Families Act for the third year in a row and signing legislation meant to target oil companies for their involvement in environmental pollution. To unpack the governor's recent actions on these bills and to understand what to look forward to at the start of the session, we are joined at the Reporters Roundtable with our Elise Kline and Alex Gault of the Watertown Daily Times and Northern New York newspapers. Happy New Year. And toward the end of last year, we saw Governor Kathy Hochul take action on a slew of bills. And of course, that meant vetoing bills. So Elise, I know that you've been covering this broadly for us. Can you tell us about some of the most closely watched bills that were vetoed at the end of last year?
Yeah, so far she's vetoed over 100 bills. And, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the bills that she's vetoed have gotten similar kind of pushback from advocates and lawmakers alike, saying that they felt her justification for vetoing them was sort of hollow or didn't make sense to them. So a couple examples, there were a few that, advocates and have already come out and been upset about. Two of them were childcare bills to address access for families to childcare, essentially related to how much they make and the hours they work, and that kind of playing into how they're able to access childcare. And both of those bills, the governor had said in her veto memo that either the social services, it would put too much of a strain on them, and also that there wasn't enough accountability in the state's financial plan to address this legislation. And advocates and lawmakers sort of felt that that was hollow. As I said, they didn't think that it made sense because they had a lot of conversations, and these are also bills that had been vetoed multiple times. Right. So they felt that there was definitely an opportunity to address this in the budget, and so they were kind of confused why that didn't end up happening, and what around the governor, they were just sort of confused about the governor's justification. Yeah. And there was also a bill called kind of nicknamed the Comptroller's Bill to address state contracts that are not covered by the Comptroller's review. So advocates and lawmakers say it would address add more transparency for taxpayers, essentially. And the governor vetoed that bill, saying essentially that it would impede the state's ability to address emergencies, and also that it would potentially release trade secrets from vendors. But lawmakers argued that the governor's office, because she's vetoed this multiple times, they've had multiple conversations, they've narrowed the legislation, they felt that she could, they'd be able to write the review, the summary of the contract. And also, so they weren't really sure why that wouldn't be able to why that would be releasing trade secrets. Essentially, they weren't understanding that. Mm-hmm. But they did say that they would, continue to have conversations about it. So I guess we'll see what happens with that bill.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it's rare that we see a bill with so much support, behind it. We saw good government groups come out in support of it. We saw lawmakers, we saw the state comptroller's office come out and heavily push the governor to sign the bill. Do we see a path forward for this bill in the years to come now that she's vetoed it? And if so, what does that look like?
I think, speaking with the assembly member who introduced it, Assemblymember Solanges, and speaking with the comptroller, there's a lot of interest in getting this bill done. They introduced a version last year that was broader. It essentially would have just put the whole contract out there. That got the veto. They hoped that their negotiations this year would get them across the finish line, and they didn't. But especially with the unanimous support in the legislature, Republican, Democrat, everybody voted for it, I think we're going to see it come back up again. And I'm not hearing a ton of appetite to negotiate further cuts to it. It's already pretty watered down compared to last year's bill. So I do think we'll see that again. Path forward depends on negotiations with the governor. And she doesn't really like to play her hands in those very much.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. And another bill that was vetoed that was closely watched, of course, was the Grieving Families Act. This was the third year in a row that the bill was vetoed by the governor. This year, she cited inflation, and she said in her veto message that the bill posed a significant risk to consumers. And this, of course, comes at a time when the governor has been touting her affordability proposal ahead of the State address. So what what did we think of the governor's message as it relates to inflation? Do we think that there's any truth to what she's alleging, or do we think that there's, some political fodder?
I think it's important to note that New York is one of only 2 states that doesn't allow you to sue in these situations where somebody is responsible for the untimely death of a loved one. It's New York and Alabama. And this bill's been kicking around for over 30 years now. It was first introduced in '94. I think we've seen inflation cited before. It doesn't seem to lead to many higher costs in the states, the majority of states that do allow it. So I'm not sure how true the inflation argument rings at the end of the day. And I know we're going to see this bill again. It's been kicking around for 30 years. It'll kick around for another 30 if it doesn't get signed.
And Elise, I know you've been covering it and speaking to advocates and people who were, pushing the governor to not sign the bill as well. So what have you been hearing from sources?
Well, families are obviously, incredibly disappointed, especially families who've lost loved ones and or are currently, in current, wrongful death lawsuits. But lawmakers are also disappointed, and they're saying, arguing that, the healthcare and, insurance companies are actually in a really incredible time of increased profits. So they felt that, it in that way also rings a little bit hollow because insurance companies are making more money currently. And, so how would this essentially, their question, how would this essentially hurt them if they're making a lot more money? And as to Alex's point, that this is, we're only one of 2 states. So if this is truly going to impact a lot of, what I heard from advocates was that it just didn't make sense statistically and mathematically. If this truly was going to have such a large impact, how come we're not seeing that in like the 48 other states across the country?
Right. And the governor didn't veto all the bills, right? She did sign the Climate Change Superfund, which would make oil and gas companies financially responsible for pollution. So what is the impact of the governor signing this bill, and how might this affect the state's ability to reach its climate goals?
Well, it's certainly going to lead to lawsuits. I can tell you that. There are already things filed. It's going to face a firm challenge in the courts. And I could see it going, all the way up to the top of the court system to be decided. I think if we're talking about increased costs, I think that might be more likely to cause some increased costs. If you're having, ExxonMobil paying billions of dollars a year, who's going to carry that cost? Ultimately, they're not going to let the company do that. It's going to be the people buying the gas and buying the products. So besides legal challenges, I think it might lead to some increased costs. And I'm certainly interested to see what specifically the money collected from this program actually goes towards. Because it's important to keep in mind, New York doesn't contribute all that heavily to climate change anymore. We've spent years trying to pare down our carbon emissions, and New York as a state is a small drop in the ocean of CO2 emissions. So what can we do here with that money to make a bigger impact remains to be seen.
It certainly will be interesting to see how this, plays out, especially because a lot of lawmakers pushing for it had, sort of emphasized that companies contributing towards climate change should be helping to pay for cleaning it up, which is what the state's trying to do. And, we hear a lot from, lawmakers in the legislature that, we need to address this, but how are we going to pay for it? So it would be interesting to see exactly how their vision, and now that they finally got it passed, it's been a long fight. It'll be interesting to see how it actually plays out.
And at the time we're filming this, of course, we're about less than 2 weeks away from the governor, unveiling her State of the State address. She has been putting forth some of the proposals, one of them being affordability. So I wanted to hear from each of you, what are you looking forward to most when it comes to that address on January 14th?
I think what I'm looking for, I'm interested to see what she does on school funding. That was a big conversation last year. We've got the Rockefeller report in hand, which has what's called a menu of options to address school funding, update it for the current situation. What I found interesting is that the governor burned a fair bit of political capital last year on proposing the end of hold harmless, which essentially says the state can't cut aid to a district from one year to the next. It essentially capped some districts, they were getting the same amount for years, not necessarily needing all of that money. What I found interesting is that the Rockefeller report came out, said there should be a phased end to hold harmless that should be removed from about 50% of schools. And then the governor that day comes out with a statement saying she no longer supports ending hold harmless language or removing that from state law. So I'm interested to see what the next steps are, what the agreement is. I'm sure lawmakers are talking about it now, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it into the budget process. And the other thing that I'm keeping my eye on as well is prisons. I cover the North Country. Prisons are a big part of the economy up north. We have a fair few of them built in the 80s. And interestingly, we're coming off of, December, there was a very violent death of an inmate, Robert Brooks, at Marcy Correctional in Oneida County. I'm hearing calls for prison closures. At the same time, the governor had the power to close 3 more prisons before April, but that expired yesterday. January 1st was the last day she could have announced a closure. I'm curious if she'll look for more power to close prisons, and also curious if the calls to close Marcy or Mohawk correctional facilities will be heeded.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting too to see what happens in the legislature on immigration reform. I know in years past there have been advocates have called for multiple bills to address access issues and disparities on that front, especially with what's going to happen with the new White House administration. I think that'll be a pretty high focus. It's already been a focus in years past with the migrant crisis in New York here. So I think that will definitely be a big point of contention and something that's discussed a lot throughout the year. Whether or not that'll end up in the budget, which bills are related to financial means, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But that will certainly be interesting. And also the governor's inflation checks that she's also kind of mentioned, or inflation rebate, that will be interesting to see how that plays out, I guess. So, I'm sure New Yorkers will be excited to get at least a little bit of money back.
Well, certainly a lot to look forward to. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but we thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we were speaking with Alex Gault of the Watertown Daily Times and Northern New York newspapers, and our Elise Kline. And for more information on the end of year action on bills sent to the governor, you can visit our website. That's at nynow.org.